What's up guys, it's Nimbus Reviews here, back with another One Piece video. And I know I'm really late on this, but today I just wanted to discuss what we already know about Devil Fruit Awakenings, and some theories about, for example, what Logia's could be, what Luffy's awakening might be, and a few other things. But with that being said, let's hop right into the discussion. The first ever mention of a devil fruit being able to be awakened was way back in chapter 544 by none other than Crocodile. He offhandedly mentioned that the Jailer Beast and Impel Down are awakened zone users, and that their greatest strengths are their toughness and recovery speed. This is the first and last time awakened zones has ever been mentioned throughout the story. The first thing I found very interesting about this is that Crocodile seems to know a lot more about devil fruits than he has let us know throughout the story, but this is something that I'll discuss later on in the video. Since this is the only time we've seen confirmed zone users that have been awakened, we don't really have much to go on or discuss. But since we did see multiple of them at that time, and all of their awakenings did the exact same thing, I think it's safe to assume that all regular zones get the same basic stat boost, extra recovery ability, and are most likely put into an animalistic state where they aren't really capable of thinking like themselves when in their awakened forms. And as for ancient and mythical zones, we don't have any that have been confirmed, so I don't have anything to base any ideas on besides the regular zone awakening, but I honestly hope that whatever their awakening is, it isn't the same as regular zones. Because for me, they're really just underwhelming, and if you aren't able to overcome the aspect of losing your ability to think normally, then it wouldn't be that useful against most people who are actually capable in battle. We have seen some cases of ancient zone users having strange transformations, like Jack in Black Maria's hybrid forms being more similar to small users than regular zone users. Or people like Queen, Black Maria, and Sasaki have strange abilities that their respective animal/dinosaurs wouldn't naturally have. I think at one point Oda did say that if you train your zone devil fruit enough, you can alter your hybrid form, and if I can find the source for that, I'll put it up on the screen, but I can't really recall where it was from. And that also doesn't really explain the strange abilities like some of the others have. Like Queen, obviously we can explain his, why he's a scientist, he's a cyborg, he's been able to change and modify his body. But what about Black Maria? Why is she able to breathe fire from her spider's mouth? Or Sasaki, why is he able to rotate his head shield in a way that isn't biologically possible? So unless these are some sort of technology that probably Queen put into them, we have no way of confirming whether this was a result of them awakening their fruit or something else entirely. And as for mythical awakenings, I have literally nothing to go on, and I can't imagine how powerful an awakened mythical zone would be. There are two people who I could imagine two interesting awakenings from. First being Kaido, as we know his is like the koi fruit, based on a Chinese myth where koi fish are trying to race up a waterfall and the one who gets to the top is turned into a dragon. So maybe at one point when Kaido first got his fruit, he was only able to be a koi fish, and through awakening his fruit, he was able to turn into a dragon. Or there's someone like Marco who has the phoenix fruit, who maybe his awakening is being reborn, because we know phoenixes are reborn through the ashes or whatever. But with that, I've covered everything we know about zone devil fruit awakenings, so let's move on to the Paramecium fruits. The first time an awakening was mentioned for a Paramecium user was in chapter 785. After Luffy pushed Doflamingo into a corner with Gear 4, he was forced to use the awakened power of the Ito Ito no Mi, in which he is able to change objects around him into string, whereas without using the awakening, he can only produce string directly from his own body. As a power-up, this is much more impressive than the previously seen zone awakening, because being able to change the environment around you not only gives you infinitely more material to use in battle, but it also greatly extends your reach, because instead of having to shoot or conjure a material from your body and hit the opponent, you could turn something near your opponent into whatever material you manipulate, such as string for Doflamingo, that's right next to that person, and use it to attack them. We've seen Doflamingo do this with the floor, with the buildings, throughout his fight in Dressrosa versus Luffy, so it's safe to say this is a common thing for awakened Paramecium fruit users to do. When first demonstrating his awakening, Doflamingo says this: "It's very rare, but some powers can awaken and affect objects aside from the wielder." I think the use of some in that statement is very important, because it can mean one of two things. Either only some devil fruits can awaken, or only some devil fruit awakenings are the ability to affect other objects with their power. And if it is the latter, then does it mean only Paramecium fruits get this ability, or only some devil fruits regardless of classification get this ability? As we already know, zones don't have this ability when awakened, but it could be possible that Logia fruits have this ability when awakened. I personally don't believe that this is Logia's awakening form for two reasons. First being that Logia users are already able to produce as much of their material as they want without having it to be directly from their body. The second reason is because Oda decided to make Katakuri a special Paramecium rather than a Logia, and the fact that Logias are meant to be natural elemental power. I understand that may be confusing, so I'll explain. Before I explain, I would like to say I know this is headcanon and I'm a little bit reaching, So before you go in the comments and destroy me about it, I already know. So aside from mochi not being an element or naturally occurring substance, Katakuri is in all regards a Logia user. He is able to become, create, and manipulate a substance like a Logia, whereas a Paramecium can only create and manipulate a substance like Mr. 3 and Doflamingo, or their body changes to have the properties of something like Luffy, having all the properties of rubber, but he can't turn into rubber. In chapter 280, Enel said that Luffy is a mere Paramecium user and he has to retain his original form, meaning he cannot become the substance that he takes the properties from, and he has to retain his original form, meaning he can't become intangible. So what I'm getting at is that I believe Oda decided to make Katakuri a special Paramecium because he wanted to have the ability to change things around him into mochi. I just find it hard to believe that Oda made an entirely new Devil Fruit category because it isn't an element. So if Logias had this ability, then Oda would have just left Katakuri a Logia like he had him originally. For me, it wouldn't be so hard to believe this if it wasn't introduced so late in the story. If we've seen other special Paramecium users like way back in the Paradise of the Grand Line. Another reason why I don't believe Logias get this ability is because Crocodile essentially already has this ability. Mind you, it is limited and there are some caveats, but he didn't mention that he was an awakened Devil Fruit user. He even re-explains his powers in chapter 541. Just 3 chapters prior to him explaining what awakened zones are. So if he knew that he was awakened and talked about awakened zones, then I'm sure he would have mentioned that he was awakened at the same time. And the ability that he did re-explain during this time was his ability to dehydrate objects around him, turning it into sand. Like I said, there are limitations though, as he has to be touching them. He can't do it to things like metal. And for example, like living things, he's able to dehydrate them, but they don't turn into sand unless he just hasn't dehydrated them far enough for them to turn into sand for some reason. Now that I've explained why I don't think Logias have the same awakening as Paramecium users, I like to discuss what their awakening power could be based on the little we've seen of them. My thought is that Logia users are able to change the natural environment around them to fit their power, and I think we have seen a few examples of this. First, I would like to talk about 3 really obvious ones, being Aki Inu and Kuzan with Punk Hazard and Crocodile with Alabasta. The landscape and the environment in Punk Hazard was completely changed after Aki Inu and Kuzan's fight there. Some might say, oh, they just use their powers a lot, so there's just leftovers of it. But that isn't the case at all. The environment is actually different now. There isn't just lava and ice everywhere. It's actually Winter Island on one half of the island, with actual snow and everything else you would expect from Winter Island. And there are active volcanoes and seemingly fire that can be put out on the other side of the island. And if there were 2 Logia users that I would almost guarantee were awakened, it would be these 2. And as for Alabasta, I only have this thought because it just happened to rain after Crocodile was defeated, meaning while he was still conscious and awake, his power might have been making the desert more suitable for his liking. Whereas he doesn't like rain, water is his weakness. If he gets touched by water, his intangibility is completely negated. So while he was still conscious, it completely stopped Alabasta from ever raining. Obviously there's a few other explanations you can say, like someone used dance powder and that's why, or it was just symbolism from Oda and he thought it would look good after Crocodile being defeated. But me and a few other people I've seen throughout the community do believe that this might be the case. Having these thoughts made me look at other islands differently. Like perhaps they were affected in the same way by an awakened Logia user. The 2 islands that come to mind are Raijin Island, which I know a lot of people talk about and would be a result of the Goro Goro no Mi that Enel has right now, as well as Eni's lobby being light/daytime all the time, which would be a result of the Pika Pika no Mi who Kizaru currently has. Now, I'm not too hard set on this theory because I don't really see how this would be a big enough power boost that would be considered awakening. And if you read the Ace novels, you can also see that even just after eating the devil fruit, the general area around him seemed to be hotter. So maybe Logias could have an awakening that is specific to a singular fruit. For example, the Mera Mera no Mi, Ace's fruit, could be the ability to make blue flames. The Suna Suna no Mi, Crocodile's fruit, could be the dehydration ability. Caribou's fruit, which I'm not too familiar the name with, could be the ability to hold things in a seemingly infinite pocket space, and so on and so on. Honestly, after seeing Kid and Law having awakened their fruits, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of other people have already awakened their fruits and we just don't know it. I didn't really plan on theorizing in this video, but since I have already went on this tangent, I might as well talk about Paramecium types that don't produce and manipulate a substance in the way Doflamingo, Mr. 3, and Paramecium and other countless characters do. The fruits I'm talking about are like Luffy's Gomu Gomu no Mi, or Buggy's Baku Baku no Mi, or even Alvida's fruit. These Paramecium are different because they are something that affect and change the body, And even within the three I named, there are differences, because Luffy and Alvida's fruit are always active, but Buggy has to specifically use his ability for it to change his body. There are basically only two options for these. Either they all have their own specific awakening power, or Oda will find a way to affect the objects around them. Since I want to save my Luffy theories for a little bit later, my basic idea for Buggy would be him being able to chop things around him, and since I don't think that alone would be useful, I think it would be fair to allow him to control the things he's chopped as well, like he does with his own body parts. And as for Alvida, maybe she could just make everything else slippery, which would be good for throwing off other enemies, but it wouldn't really boost her in any way that I can think of at least. Now for someone like Luffy, who has gained the properties of rubber but can't become rubber, I think it would be really strange if all of a sudden he was able to manipulate and conjure rubber from other objects. So that completely is out of the picture for me. The people who talk about, oh, the bounce world, the gum gum world or whatever, I don't even think that's a possibility. For me, I think it's much more likely for it to happen something within his own body, specifically a new form of his gears, whether it's a new form of gear 4 or a completely new gear entirely. A lot of people like to mention vulcanized rubber, but I think that's basically what gear 4 is, where you get contain the properties of rubber still, but you're kind of hardened. You have the durability that you would normally have with hockey without losing your rubber abilities. Honestly, I think whatever Oda does with the Gumma Gumma no Mi, Luffy's Devil Fruit, is going to throw everybody off, and it's not going to be something most people thought of. And with that being said, I just want to say I basically don't have any ideas for Luffy's Devil Fruit Awakening. There's some other things I can discuss, like Chopper. I think his Rumble Balls and his Monster Point is him just kind of hacking his Devil Fruit to get into his awakening before he would normally be ready to. Or someone like Brook, who could possibly already be awakened. He had his fruit like longer than like anyone we know, really, I think, depending on how young he got it. I mean, at the bare minimum, he had it for 50 years. And his ability has so many crazy abilities that I wouldn't be surprised if it's already awakened and we just don't know it. And Nico Robin, we've seen in her fight, she's done something we've never seen before with her like devil form, and that could possibly be an awakening. But I don't want to make this video too long or theorize too much, so with that being said, I think it's time to end this video. I've covered everything that we know about Devil Fruit Awakenings already, as well as a few theories, but I'm very interested in what your theories are and what you think the future of Devil Fruit Awakenings could be, whether it's what Luffy's awakening will be, or what the Logia awakenings will be, or something completely different. What are your thoughts on my theories? Let me know in the comments below, and if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, and you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. But until next time, later.